Good evening and welcome to the Coon Rapids City Council meeting for Tuesday, December 15th, 2020. If you could please rise and join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Kraskowiak.
Here.
Councilmember Kicker.
Here.
Councilmember Demmer.
Here.
Councilmember Geisler.
Here.
Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Wells.
Here.
Mayor Cook.
Here. Thank you. Next, we should adopt this evening's agenda.
So move adoption of the agenda.
Second.
Motion by Johnson, second by Wells. Any discussion or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the agenda is adopted. And the first item on that agenda is to accept a donation to the fire department from the Coon Rapids VFW Post 9625. Chief Piper.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and council members, I'm grateful to be here tonight to inform you that the VFW is here to make a very generous donation to the fire department. I was contacted by Rich Lean and Teresa Shumway from the VFW a short while ago, and they asked if their fire department needed anything, and gave them a list of a few things. And they came back, and what they selected from the list is turnout gear dryers. In other words, the turnout gear we wear to go into a structure fire. As soon as we get out of the structure fire, we want to get it back to the station, get it washed because A, it's dirty, but that dirt contains carcinogens, and of course, it's a cancer prevention thing. After it goes through the washer, we put it in a conventional commercial tumble dryer, which really beats them up. Takes a lot of the life out of them, and each set's approximately $2,500. So with that said, the new idea is that instead of putting them in a tumble type dryer, you put them in basically a big cabinet, and they stay stationary, and then the warm air flows through the dryer. They're about $700 to $800 a piece. So with that said, that's what they selected, and we will be getting new turnout gear dryers for Station 1 and Station 2. And with that said, I'm very grateful for what the VFW does. I've been here 39 years, and we've always had a great relationship with the V and all the things they do for the city. With that said, Commander Shane Fields would like to say a few words, and then Mayor, at the end, if you could come forward, they would like to present you with the check. Commander Fields.
Appreciate you having us out here today.
Welcome.
We're very excited to give a check. We really do. We really believe we do a lot of support for Coon Rapids. We've done a lot of things, but more than that, I will say the fire department has been out. They were out here last week with us and helping us, and has done a very good job with that. We're excited to be able to give a check. I wanted to bring up a couple of the people that really made a huge difference in it. Obviously, both my gambling managers, Bob and Rich. Rich was 20 years, 30 years with the Air Force and as a fire chief. So he understood exactly what they were talking about, what they needed. And Teresa, he'd talked to Teresa. He was our past commander, and she actually grabbed the ball of it and said, "Hey, let me see who needs help." And I will say that credit to the fire department, because in Coon Rapids here, they were prepared. They had a list of what they wanted immediately. There wasn't a question mark.
Yeah, we know that.
Yeah, it wasn't, hey, well, let me think about how I could use it. It was, no, this is what I want. So with that, I wanted to bring up those guys to give the check over to you guys.
Yeah, they have a list for us too.
Yep. Yeah, we see that list every year at budget time. Well, maybe before we do the check, I can have them each introduce yourselves. I love that. I don't love the mask, but I love masks. That's a great one.
My name is Rich Lean.
Bob Fawcett, retired gambling manager for the VFW.
Shane Fields.
Teresa Shumway, retired Air Force for 30 years.
And just And just for the record, it took me about 2 hours to get that list together. It wasn't immediately.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, this is extremely generous, and we really appreciate all the great work that Coon Rapids VFW always does for us and around the community. And we just thank you very much for coming in, and thank you for doing this.
Your Honor.
Councilmember Johnson?
I'll move adoption of the resolution, I think, that goes with this. It's 20-110, accepting the donation from the Coon Rapids VFW Post 9625.
Second.
Motion by Johnson, second by Geisler. Discussion? Just a lot of gratitude.
Yep.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. We are on to item 2, which is an approval of the minutes.
Your Honor?
Councilmember Kicker? Was it? Councilmember Demmer?
Whatever.
One of you guys over on that side. Councilmember Demmer.
Move approval of the minutes of the December 1st meeting.
Second.
Motion by Demmer, second by Kicker. Discussion or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. And we are on to item 3. We have 2 items on our consent agenda this evening. The first one is item 3, which is to approve the final payment to North Valley Incorporated for Project 19-1 Street Reconstruction. There was a change order in this for a couple water service taps and hookups. The actual project costs were less than the final contract amount due to quantity adjustments from the original bid. The delay in the final payment is related to ensuring proper documentation was provided by the contractor and subcontractor. And that was good to know because I went October of 19. Wow, that was a while ago. So we're looking to approve the change order and the final payment to North Valley Incorporated in the amount of $57,719.26 for Project 19-1 Street Reconstruction. And then item 4, which is the second and last item on our consent agenda, is to adopt resolutions 20-103, 20-104, 20-105, and 20-106, decertifying tax increment financing districts, tax increment financing districts 1-19, 1-20, 1-21, and 1-27 are all housing districts created in the 1990s for small-scale affordable housing projects. These include 5 and 12-unit projects developed by the Anoka County Community Action Program, as well as the 12 and 14-unit Villas of Palm and Villas of Caroline developments. All obligations related to the creation of these districts have been satisfied in the last several years, and as a result, the districts are now generating excess increment that is paid to Anoka County and distributed to the various taxing jurisdictions in the same manner as all other taxes payable. Therefore, it is appropriate to officially decertify the districts effective December 31st, 2020, and return the properties to the tax rolls. This is primarily a housekeeping item and does not affect the operation of these housing developments or the city's overall budget. That's a nice little synopsis of how the TIF district works. That's kind of nice. So we're looking to adopt Resolution 20-103, decertifying tax increment financing district 1-19. Resolution 20-104, decertifying tax increment financing district 1-20. Resolution 20-105, decertifying tax increment financing district 1-21. And Resolution 20-106, decertifying tax increment financing district 1-27.
Your Honor,
Councilmember Kicker.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Kicker, second by Demmer. Any discussion or questions from the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember
I
Griscoviac.
do have a couple of questions on consent agenda item number 3.
I mean, I'm perfectly fine with the $57,000 payment to North Aggregate, but I was just wondering, since this project came in so far under budget, back in 19, almost $500,000, I'm wondering a couple of things, and it's going to come up later in the same meeting because we're going to set assessments. How does that work when we come in that far under budget in terms of assessment? The assessment was already made, right? So does it go back to those folks? That was my first question. I was just going to get some clarity on that.
Mr. Hanson, you want to approach the mic?
Just slide up there.
Councilmember Griskoviak, that's a great question. We adopt the assessments at the first meeting, typically in May of each year, and those amounts are set. So these projects, we encounter unknowns, and as part of that, we absorb all of the risk. So if the project goes over budget, we don't change it either way. The assessments themselves fund approximately 20% of the street surface costs. Our goal is always to get to 50%. We're much less than that, really due to the orientation of the properties and which ones we can actually assess and prove and demonstrate benefit for.
Okay. And then the other part of that is that later in the year in 19, we actually bonded for this project. So did we bond for that extra $400,000, and then does that just go into our road construction fund if it's not used and then carried over to future road construction projects? Is that how that works?
That's a question we'd probably need to
Finance.
follow up with you, get a little bit more feedback on that one from finance. So we can follow up on that.
Okay.
I thought, wow, that sounds like a really tough question for Mr.
Yeah, I
Hanson.
probably,
That deep in the weeds on the financing.
That's a good question, though, because that changes, you know.
it does.
My sense is it would just be shifted within our street reconstruction fund and then used for the next projects. It all gets paid out of the same street reconstruction fund that we use for these projects.
Mayor,
Mr.
Council, we
Stemwedel?
can follow up with some detail on it, but yes, generally, we carry a balance in the street reconstruction fund, so that balance would just be a little bit larger. So as we project out over years and what might need to be bonded for, might mean there's just a little bit less than in the future year that we'd have to bond for.
Right. That would make sense, you know, instead of just, you know, paying back that bond a little early with that we didn't use, it goes into the next road construction and we just don't bond for as much. That's the way I would see it. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or discussion on the consent agenda? Councilmember
It's
Demmer?
on the next one, though, so you can sit down. So the TIF district one is interesting, and I'm not asking for a work session or anything like that, but it'd be really, I think, informative just to see a list of here's all the TIF districts that are active, here's when they started, and here's when they end. Like if we had a 40-year calendar, and you could just kind of see a bar for each one, and we'd see if there's a big glut that roll off, or if, you know, I don't know that it really affects what we do decision-wise, but I think it would be informative and help us understand how much is coming off the rolls, so we better understand if it's, you know, if there's a point at which we see a lot coming off, maybe that changes how we think about TIF.
Sure. Yeah, Mayor and Council, actually, coincidentally, as a staff, we just talked about getting together and updating in January where we're at with TIF and sort of looking at future potential for economic development and so forth. So I think sometime then, shortly after that, we can provide you with an update on that information.
Great, thanks.
All right. Any other questions or discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, and the consent agenda is adopted. Next, we are going to do our annual public hearing on the city's stormwater pollution prevention program. Mr. Hanson, did you have something on this too? You do. It's the Mark Show tonight. Nice.
Mayor and Council, before we hold the public hearing, I do have what I hope will be a short presentation on our stormwater pollution prevention plan.
All right.
This will highlight the key components of what we do as part of our stormwater pollution prevention program or plan. So The city of Coon Rapids is a permitted municipal separate storm sewer system, or MS4, agency under the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. And as part of that, we're required to have a stormwater pollution prevention plan. So what I'm going to talk about here is the highlights of that plan. Each year, we're required to conduct an annual public meeting or a hearing as part of this MS4 permit that we have. And if you recall, years prior, we would always hold this hearing in April. And we found from talking to other agencies in the PCA that we could also get a lot of this information out by having public meetings. So in 2019, we developed some graphics and handouts and used that to engage people at our Public Works open house, as well as more so at our summer in the city meetings. Well, of course, COVID happened this year and we weren't able to do it. So we're back to our old format of having a public hearing. And the other item is, like I said, as part of the MS4 permit, we're required to have a stormwater pollution prevention plan. So one of the things that we do is a lot of public education. We do this by having quarterly newsletter articles, information available on our city website. We also enlist the assistance and help, which we're very grateful for, from the Coon Creek Watershed District. So they provide a lot of the articles in our city newsletter. They also come to our Summer in the City meetings. We have staff training that we do on a very annual basis for erosion, sediment control, and then stormwater treatment. So all of our plow drivers are trained in the proper application of salt. All of our engineering staff are certified in erosion control and site management. Each year, of course, we hold a public meeting or a public hearing. We found that we had a lot more success engaging people and talking directly and answering questions when we just have this type of, when we highlight these things in the other formats. So I think that that proved very successful, and when we're able to, we'll go back to that. We provide a lot of information in our city newsletters. Very proud of our recycling center and the options and opportunities that that provides. We have special events held there and partnerships with schools. We also require, as part of every construction development that happens, every construction project, in fact, that happens in our city, we have not only third-party inspections that are required for development projects, but we also ourselves do inspection for all of the land disturbing activities. So what we're looking to make sure is that contractors aren't tracking sediment into streets, and if they are, that they're cleaning it up. We watch that very carefully. We also partner with the watershed on those inspections. And then if we have to, we enforce them. So occasionally we do have to work with developers to bring them back into compliance if there's an issue, things aren't under control in terms of erosion or sediment on their sites. Our city staff, we inspect all of our stormwater outfalls, sediment basins, that's a fancy term for ponds, and then stormwater best management practices. An outfall is anything, it's the end point of their storm sewer system, so it's where it outlets into a wetland. It could also be a storm sewer pipe that goes into a different city or into the Mississippi River. So we inspect 20% of those each year. It's not every single apron or outlet at the end of every single storm sewer system. It's those ones that really interact with the wetlands or the river, basically. And then 100%, we inspect 100% of our stormwater best management practices. So those are rain gardens, filtration basins, infiltration basins, things like that, every single year. Again, we do a lot of staff training, so staff are trained in best management practices for hazardous material handling. We also review our salt application practices and policies annually, calibrating our equipment, inspecting our vehicles, make sure they're all in proper working order. Salt applications on roads is getting to be more and more of an issue. Chloride pollution into our water resources, so we do keep very careful track on that. All of our snow plows have GPS tracking devices on them, so we know how much salt that we're using. And then a very interesting, I think, innovative application that just came along within the past year is the installation of Yoma plow blades. So we have some of our snow plows that are now equipped with Yoma plows. There's a picture of it on the left of the screen there. That's the front plow blade. They actually come in a set with the front plow, the underbelly, and then the wing. We're able to get part of the costs paid for from the Coon Creek watershed. But what these plow blades do is they have a rubber edge on one side and then the typical carbide blade cutting edge on the other side. They follow the contours and the ruts of the road much more carefully and closely and allow us to use less salt. So that's the idea. We've tested them out so far 1 year and found great success. Other cities are having very good success as well, and we're going to continue to apply for more grants and apply these to more snowplows in the future. We sweep the streets twice annually, and in reality, we're sweeping all the time. Our street sweepers are always running. What we really do more precisely is we contract for some additional sweeping over and above to handle those peak periods. We have the fall leaf festival that we have to, when everything comes down very quickly, we have to have contracted help for that, and then the spring to help capture some of that sediment. This process removes more than 500 dump truck loads of sediment and leaves from our system each year. This is really a phenomenal part of our program and does a lot to prevent pollution into our water resources. We also inspect our public works maintenance facility annually, actually quarterly. And then we continue to inspect and repair the various components of our stormwater system, which translates into the repair replacement of 12 to 24 catch basins throughout the year. We clean hundreds of feet of storm sewer pipe and remove multiple dump truck loads of sediment from our pipes. This is our own forces within our streets department that does this work. And then, of course, we have our annual capital improvement program, our street reconstruction program, that also does a major component of replacing and upgrading our storm sewer and stormwater features throughout our city. So with that, I'll answer any questions that council has and then turn it over to council to hold the public hearing.
Who else missed the Leaf Festival? Was that part of the Oktoberfest or what? Councilmember Demmer?
I remember at one of the meetings in the park, back when we had meetings in the park, that one of the groups was talking about the Adopt a Drain program. Curious if that's something people should look into and how your feelings are on that, because it sounded good to me. It sounded like it keeps junk out of the stormwater.
Yeah, that's an initiative that is being promoted by the Anoka Conservation District. There's an education specialist that does attend a number of our Summer in the Park meetings, and they're available to connect Coon Rapids residents if they're interested in actually adopting their drain. So, you know, there's hundreds of these drains throughout our system, and the city forces can't get to all of them all the time. So, you know, just adopting it, it's really just helping us out, cleaning that sediment or those leaves off the cover, not only making sure that the road doesn't flood, but also making sure that that stuff doesn't go inside and pollute the system or the water resources downstream.
And I assume that, like, you want to make sure your drains are relatively clear as winter comes so that you don't get a lot of ice around the road.
Yes.
Anyway, right?
Yep,
So,
yep. Mhm.
okay.
All right. Councilor Griscoviac?
So Mark, when you say inspect 20% of the stormwater outfalls and sediment bases each year, when you inspect those, is it the city or is it the watershed that like checks to see what the, you know, what's there, what sediment is there, nitrogen or chloride or, you know, anything like that? Is that a different agency that's looking into what's? going outflow?
So to answer that question, it's Public Works forces that conduct that inspection. We have a checklist form that we follow. What we're really looking to or what we're really inspecting for is to make sure that they're functioning properly, primarily from a flood control standpoint. In terms of the pollutant levels, sediment or phosphorus, we're not there yet. That might be something that we cross the road down we look to do in the future. But really what we have to have is a baseline level of what those ponds are right now. And that almost involves sending somebody out there to survey each one and then comparing over the years. So some cities have done that. We've contemplated it. It's something that we're looking at doing in the future. I suspect that we will within the next 5 years. But in terms of the pollutant levels, we're not looking at that. The watershed would be more in charge of evaluating sediment loads and phosphorus levels in our water resources.
So it's more the engineering, the operational
Yeah,
aspect.
we're looking to make sure that there's no trees or brush that are blocking the inlets or the outlets, making sure there's no erosion around the edges, that we can get to it and maintain it, those types of things.
I appreciate that because I know we went out and checked out that one in the neighborhood, so
Right.
thank you.
All right. Any other questions of Mr. Hanson before we open the public hearing? Hearing none, let's open the public hearing for the annual public hearing on the city's stormwater pollution prevention program. Is anybody here to address council on the city's stormwater pollution prevention program? Not everybody's jumping up all at once. Yes, ma'am. You have to come up to the mic, though. Tell us who you are.
Hello there. My name is, can you hear me okay?
We
Okay,
can.
I prefer to keep the mask on.
That's fine.
My name is Katie Kofer, and actually, I don't know if any of you remember Mayor Lewis.
Bob
I-
Lewis?
we bought his house.
Oh, okay, sure.
And the question is, the corner that we live on is Dogwood and 119th. It's a big corner, and the only storm drainage there are on our corner. There's two. They're older. Then our neighbor has two at his corner, and then our neighbor has two. I bought knee-high boots and a rake, rock rake. Every time there's a big rain, I go through, clear it out of all the debris, and then we are in charge of clearing it out. Since I've been there, unfortunately, I'm a carpenter. I've been laid off. I'm outside quite a bit doing a lot of landscaping, even in the winter. I've not seen city workers, the city employees checking out the storm drains to see if they're functioning. They are, because stuff is flowing pretty well. But the question is, it was a great segue too, is that plow, the new plow you're talking about too, is with the storm drain, this area, if we don't go out there and clear this out, the water will flood, and then it backs up and it goes down into the cul-de-sac of Dogwood, and it floods them out. So it's up to us, which is fine, that we go out there and clear it out. But this is an older neighborhood, and the question is how often do you look at updating your system? Because these are the only drains for these two roads. So that's the question. And then, of course, with the plowing, the road right here, it's all ice at the bottom of the driveway, whatever. But it's not even just the driveway, it goes around the corner, which makes it extremely scary, and I almost got hit last year, which we'll bring up later. So that was my question for Mr. Mark.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Anybody else here to address council for the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Program public hearing? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. And that was it. We don't have to take any action on that. Correct?
To follow up on those comments, so, and to answer a couple of those questions, I will talk to our streets and storm supervisor, Josh Peterson, to see what we can do about checking out those storm drains, making sure that they're clear and they're not obstructed. I will also let him know about the plowing concerns around that location. To answer the question about when we update the storm sewer system, is typically when we reconstruct the street. So we do talk to a lot of residents about these types of things, in particular when we are proposing or contemplating a street reconstruction project. And there's a couple of things that we do to address that. It's most commonly by adjusting the castings, switching out to have a more high-capacity type of casting or an inlet that can take more water and is less prone to clogging. And if we also look at adding additional structures, if there's an opportunity to do so, additional catch basin structures. We're not always able to extend the length of the pipe, and there's a lot of reasons for that. It's because the elevations of the overall system is pretty well set when the development occurs. So to change all of that holistically would be very cost prohibitive. That's typically how we address those items. In most cases that I'm aware of, we deal with this a lot. It takes care of most of the concerns that we see in these neighborhoods.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Hanson? All right, thank you, sir. And we are on to item under new business. Item 6. I was way off on my meeting because I jumped ahead to the street reconstruction because for some reason I was thinking was that section in there, but it's not. No. Item 6, consider feasibility report and order a public hearing and assessment hearing for street reconstruction, project 12-1. Mr. Hanson, how do you want to do both of these together, or are you going to do these separately?
Yes, Mayor, if we could do them both
Whatever
eventually
works for you.
together, but I do have a presentation I've prepared for council prior to those two items. So this is a follow-up to our July 28 meeting where we workshop with the council our proposed program, street reconstruction program for 2021. So this presentation is going to highlight some of the main items for that, and eventually we'll get to the point where we request authorization for a public hearing for these projects. So some background on these projects and streets that we have selected for reconstruction in 2021. We rated the streets in spring of this year. We do windshield ratings. We also look and talk with our public works departments on where they're spending the most time. The latter is really the most key element of our planning process. We want to make sure that where they're spending their most time and efforts, that's where we're going that upcoming year. The streets that we're looking at for 2021 are approximately on average 35 years old. The first city project or city street reconstruction project is 21-1. It's 3 miles in length. I will get into some more detail about the project location on the next couple of slides, but I'll talk about the scope first. The scope includes complete resurfacing of the roads. We plan to replace any damaged curb and gutter, repair and replace any storm sewer sanitary manholes as necessary. We will be installing additional storm sewer catch basins, where feasible, to assist with the roadway drainage and those localized flooding concerns that we occasionally encounter. And then we'll be replacing all of the water main valves and hydrants throughout both of these neighborhoods. So the project location is the Shenandoah Oaks neighborhood. This is the group, this is the neighborhood that's bounded by Shenandoah Boulevard on the west, 131st on the north, Hanson Boulevard on the east, and then the Balfany Sod Farm on the south. Council will probably notice there's a couple of several cul-de-sacs that aren't shown in this project. That's because we were there in 2017 and we redid those at that time. The other portion of this project is the Nature's Cove development, and this is located just north of 121st. This is Bluebird Circle, and then east of Hanson Boulevard. So the next project contemplated for reconstruction next year is 21-2. It's 3.6 miles in length. Again, we would be proposing to resurface the road, replacing any damaged curb and gutter, repairing storm sewer, sanitary manholes, and then installing, of course, additional storm sewer catch basins where feasible or possible to assist with any roadway drainage concerns or issues. We would be proposing to replace valves and hydrants only within the Egret Oaks neighborhood. I'll get to where that is in a second. And then complete water main replacements in the Forest Park neighborhood, and then partial water main replacement in the neighborhood around Weston Woods. So those project locations, this is the Forest Park area, or what we're calling the Forest Park neighborhood. It's bounded by Coon Rapids Boulevard on the south, the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad tracks on the north, and then also 103rd Avenue, and this is east of Hanson Boulevard. This is the Egret Oaks neighborhood. This is south of Egret Boulevard between Eagle Street and Avocet Street. And the Weston Woods area, this is south of Foley Boulevard, including Juniper Street, 97th Avenue and Lane, and then Flintwood Streets. All of the streets in this area would be reconstructed. We would only propose to replace the cast iron pipe water main segments. The ductile iron pipe is what remains throughout the rest of this neighborhood. It was constructed much more recently, is in good shape, and can last for many more years to come. The project schedule for both projects would involve we will hold a second virtual open house at the end of January. We'll hold that over Zoom. We also have a pre-recorded presentation that I did this last fall that people can go online anytime right now. It's going to be basically the same thing, but any kind of virtual open house would allow people to ask questions. Of course, they can call us anytime as well. We'd much prefer to hold these meetings in person, but we're kind of restricted at this point. The public hearing that we would propose for both projects is on February 16. And then May 4th, we would propose the adoption of the assessments and then the award of contracts. Construction would happen generally from mid-May to end of September, early October. Letters will be sent to all of the residents that are affected, not just the ones that are assessed, but the ones in the periphery, so that they understand the project contacts, the schedule, and then are able to look at any frequently asked questions that people typically ask. Residents, property owners affected can also sign up for email updates. Each week we do a 1-week look ahead for the contractor's schedule, and they can sign up to get those notifications when those are posted on our city website. The estimated project costs, 21-1 is estimated at $5.1 million. This is a total project cost that does include contingencies and the administration costs. A majority of the project costs would be spread through various enterprise funds. The street light replacements that we're contemplating would be funded by the street light fund. So we would be looking at upgrading any city-owned streetlights on these projects, both poles and fixtures to LED fixtures. And then the street reconstruction fund would cover the surface cost, the street, the asphalt pavement, the curb and gutter, and then assessments would fill out the balance of the street surface costs. The 21-2 project is estimated at $7.7 million. This one is higher due to the additional, the water main replacement areas that we are proposing. The 2021 proposed assessment rates are, for a single-family residence, it would be $2,154. So this is $20 more than what people were assessed at a single-family rate in 2020. So the rates went up 0.9% from this year to what we're proposing next year. Any duplex, townhome, twin home, apartment complex would be assessed at a rate of $28 per front foot. Commercial properties are twice that much at $55 per foot, and industrial properties are at $70 a foot. We do not have any of those types of properties in next year's program. We do recognize the challenges that assessments put on these property owners, and as part of that, we do offer several different options for property owners to pay their assessment. We are looking at a 2.26% interest rate, and that would be spread over 10 years if one chooses to pay it over 10 years. But the first option, of course, is if a resident wants to, or a property owner wants to pay their entire assessment off without paying any interest, they can do so within a 30-day time span between May 4th and June 4th, and no interest would be charged. After that June 4th date, interest would start accruing, and one would need to contact the city to find out what that amount is. It would be a very small amount until it gets certified to the taxes, and it would just be paid then with one's property taxes. And if one were to consider doing it that way, or paying off their assessment that way over 10 years, it would amount to approximately $250 per year for a single-family resident. There are a couple of different, we think, very informative street reconstruction videos available on the city website. One walks you through the entire process, start to finish, and then the other one includes a lot of the frequently asked questions that we get on these projects. All this information is available on the city website under the engineering tab. So with that, I will answer any questions that council has, and we would recommend that the council adopt the resolutions accepting the feasibility reports, order the public hearing for February 16, and recommend that the resolutions declaring the cost to be assessed and ordering the preparation of the proposed assessment rolls also take place. And then finally, the adoption of resolutions setting the assessment hearing date for February 16 of next year. That's a very important date, by the way, that we have at least a supermajority of council members here to be able to approve that. That is what is required in order for these projects to move forward after that. So with that, I will turn it over to council and mayor for any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Hanson, so are apartments, do those fit underneath the residential higher density lots, including duplex units, the $28 per front foot?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yep.
that's the
Yeah,
apartments.
multifamily is kind of the general category that we call that. Yeah, but that could also include the twin homes or condos, and those assessments are computed a little differently,
Yeah.
but that's where that is, that's the rate that we use there.
Okay. And it's still for, if they're on a corner, it's still their front footage, it's not their side footage as well, correct?
Well, so it
Or if you're doing
depends.
both streets,
It depends if it's a commercial or a single family or a multifamily property.
it's an apartment
So-
I'm thinking of.
Yeah, so if it's an apartment, we'd look at both streets, both sides that are being reconstructed. So if only one of the streets is being reconstructed and that's where the access is, we would assess for that front footage. Same with commercial. We would only look at the side where the access is and which ones are actually being constructed. But all single-family properties pay the same. So it does not matter if you are a corner lot or an interior lot, everybody pays the same assessment for single-family residents.
And you only pay it for one. You only pay one street.
Correct, correct, yes.
All right. Any questions? Councilmember Demmer?
So everything made sense. There was that one little Bluebird Street, Nature's Cove apparently, that looked pretty far away from everything else, kind of out on its own little island. Is that just especially in bad shape, or is it just that nothing else around it's in bad shape, and so we're doing it this year? How'd that one get picked?
You know, I'm glad that you asked that question. That's a really good question. It actually wasn't on our 5-year plan before. A couple of reasons. What we're trying to do is really get to the point where we can group all of these streets together and we're not going in multiple times in one area. So, you know, in hindsight, it would have been nice if we could have been able to let Killdeer, Ibis streets, and Grouse streets within the first group of Shenandoah Oaks, let those go until now. But they were in such condition at that time, and the rest of it wasn't. All of these streets just don't degrade at the same rate. But what we're really trying to do is peel all of these streets and cul-de-sacs so we only disturb an area generally once. So Nature's Cove, it's been a street that we've been eyeing. We had a couple of questions from residents there. Our Public Works Department had that area highlighted. We figured this would be an easy one just to capture right now, group it with this other group of streets, and get it off the list.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Hanson? Since we mentioned that cul-de-sac, I want to dance delicately around the side of this. So how do you buy into the studies as far as the wear on the cul-de-sacs? For example, instead of 3 garbage trucks on a hot July day, 15 garbage trucks going through a cul-de-sac on a hot July day. Do you buy in any of the studies, or are there any of the studies you think are worth their salt? Is it highly wearable on the?
Well, certainly the garbage trucks do have the maximum effect on our streets. So I would say we've looked at them, and we, would be supportive of having less garbage trucks.
I was just kind of trying to get a side question there.
We do get that question a lot, and I would imagine that council gets the question from time to time as well. Yeah, they do cause more wear on our streets, but so do city plows and so do school buses.
Didn't that play a role, though, or a factor in kind of how thick we're creating the roads now as well?
Yes, so I'll remind everyone that we did increase the thickness of our street section. Inherently, the way you construct a cul-de-sac, they're going to generally have more, you hope that they're going to have more pavement thickness around the edges because the way you have to pave them and construct them and slope them to drain, you hope that they're going to have more than that old 2-inch standard. They usually do. But still, there's a lot of force going around that edge of the cul-de-sac, and that's where we see a lot of chip seal shoving, especially on those hot July, August days. And then eventually winter comes around and the plows can, impact that as well. So it's certainly something I think, we contemplated, but yeah. I hope that answers your question, Mayor.
Sure. I didn't want to take us too far down that rabbit hole. I was just curious.
So if you had a small cul-de-sac neighborhood, and if you get all 4 people to agree to the same garbage truck, you might pay fewer assessments over time.
Yeah.
That was where that was going, right?
Not quite, but
Okay.
anyway.
Maybe over 100 years.
All right. So, hang on. What are we doing with this?
We're ready to adopt resolution.
All right, thank you.
If you'd like, Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Geisler, there we go.
I will start with, I know we We've talked about both of them. We'll start with the first one.
Item 6.
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 21-1 Sub 4, accepting the feasibility report and ordering a public hearing on improvement for February 16th, 2021. Adopt Resolution 21-1 Sub 10, declaring the cost to be assessed and ordering preparation of a proposed assessment roll. And adopt Resolution 21-1 Sub 11, setting an assessment hearing for the date of February 16th, 2021.
Second.
Motion by Geisler, second by Kicker. Discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Griscoviac?
I would just like to say that I live up here in 21-1 over in that Oaks area. I live on Martin Street. So when we talked about this last fall, I talked to a lot of neighbors and asked them what they thought of the roads, and at that time it was unanimous. These roads are 30 to 35 years old. And then since then, going through the election cycle and walking through those neighborhoods again, unanimous that these roads need to be redone. So I'm definitely going to back this. It's going to be a great improvement to those neighborhoods. The only thing that I would like to say, and I did mention it before, is that it seems like we're doing all of the Oaks of Shenandoah at once, all those roads, all those cul-de-sacs, and there's only so many ways to get in and out of those neighborhoods. So I just wanted to make sure that all the utmost planning is done, that we, can allow people to get in and out of their driveways through the whole construction cycle. Yep.
All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. And then item 7, Councilmember Geisler or Councilmember Kicker?
Your Honor, I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 21-2 Sub 4, accepting the feasibility report and ordering a public hearing on the improvement for February 16th, 2021. And adopt resolution number 21-2 Sub 10, declaring the cost to be assessed and ordering preparations of a proposed assessment roll. And adopt resolution number 21-2 Sub 11, setting an assessment hearing date for February 16th, 2021.
Second.
Motion by Kicker, second by Demmer. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. And we are on to item 8. Consider resolution number 18-13A Sub 9, awarding a contract for Bridge 4575 repair project. Mr. Hanson, you want to cover this, or you want me to read your discussion here?
Mr. Mayor and Council, the project is...
Oh, you can't do it from the chair, Mark. It's a problem with only attending as required. You get out of practice,
Mayor and Council, the bridge rehabilitation project that we're proposing it's the historic Highway 10 bridge, and it is historic, over Coon Creek in the Port Riverwalk area. So the project contemplates repainting it. We're proposing to paint it a light gray color. In case anyone was wondering, it's not going to be the yellow color.
That question
it
came
is
up.
today.
Yeah.
We will be repairing concrete that has delaminated from the surfaces throughout, and then also repairing some drainage features around the bridge. We quoted the project last summer, in the middle of the summer, to several select contractors that we felt were capable of doing the work. At the time, it came in above our engineer's estimate, and so we decided, well, let's pause and bid it in the fall, hoping that we'll get better prices from contractors that are looking for work in 2021. Unfortunately, they didn't come in exactly where we had estimated them to. It's a tough project to estimate because a lot of the costs are within a lot of the administration that the contractor has to do. There's a lot of submittals that are required. They have to develop a paint containment plan as part of our watershed permit and our DNR permit. So there's just a lot of items that the contractor has to address, and that's kind of what they explained. All of the construction items are really in line with what our consultant that helped us put these plans together has seen in other cities. So we feel that the contractor is more than capable of doing it. They performed this work successfully in adjacent cities, and if there's any other questions here, I'd be happy to take them. I know that one of the council members here, I believe, when we asked for approval of the plans, had asked for the railings to be looked at for repainting, and we will do that. The ones on the bridge, and then the ones that are leading up to the bridge. And we'll probably, most likely paint them the same color, because we would not be looking at repainting the existing benches that are also the same, and the banner poles that are, and the bollards that are all that same color today, which is kind of a darker blue.
Some council member.
To be fair, I was questioning whether we should just take the wrought iron out and put the rocks in so it isn't there, but that wasn't part of this project, it was just more of an open question. But while you're in there, they are kind of rusty, so it makes sense to paint them if we're gonna keep them.
Thank you for pointing that out, yes. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Hanson? All right.
Your Honor,
Councilmember Demmer?
so it looks like we went from 30% higher to 25% higher, so it counts for something. So I'd move adoption of resolution number 18-13A sub 9, awarding a contract to Redstone Construction LLC in the amount of $203,410 for the historic Bridge 4575 repair project.
Second.
Motion by Demmer, second by Kicker. Do we get any federal funding for that historic?
Maybe just get more rules attached to it.
Any discussion?
Your Honor,
Councilmember Griscoviac?
I do think we need to discuss this just a little bit. Back at the November meeting, when we approved plans and specifications, we didn't see any plans and specifications, so none of us on the council really know what this is gonna look like. There's been no renditions. Maybe our consultant has that, but I haven't seen it yet. Has any other rest of the council seen any of the plans or specifications on this?
I assumed with concrete repairs, it was basically going to look the same except a
Well,
different color.
And that's a good point, that we're gonna spend north of $200,000 to have the same thing. To just have it painted. I thought maybe it would be an elevated project where we would have maybe some stones or something that stand out as an entrance to our city, but I don't see that we're seeing that. And again, it's a big expense. And the other thing that I think we should think about is, we've got Centra homes in there with all those brand-new homes. We are potentially soliciting funds to get a trail connection over that road in an elevated walkway. And we're thinking about redoing Alf Flynn Park at some point, and you got the clay hole there. I would think that we might want to back off on this right now and maybe see how does all that fit together in a project that really links it all together, because this is going to, I would imagine this bridge and this trail would link up into across the trail crossing and potentially have some work to do there too. So, and again, the historic bridge, that's kind of a stretch in my opinion. It is an eyesore right now. There's no question about it. Something needs to be done, but I would like to see something done that is more lasting and more impactful as that entrance to our city, and therefore I would oppose spending $203,410 for a paint job. So I'd like to have that discussion.
Councilmember Johnson?
I guess I tend to agree with Councilmember Griscoviac about having it at least be considered as part of the larger project and the larger neighborhood and what it's going to look like. I mean, as people here know, I've been pushing, especially now that we're getting residential homes in at Port Riverwalk, not just a trail connection, but a pedestrian bridge to go over it. And there was a part of me that was wanting to hear that some consideration was being given to make it kind of match up with what the plans are for that. And then how that might fit into kind of the larger improvements in the area. I guess the question I have for staff is, are any of these repairs necessary right now because we've got a safety issue due to cracked concrete or the issue with respect to, you know, it being an area of the trail system that we might have to close off because it's becoming dilapidated in the concretes there. And I've been through it a few times, and so it is in pretty tough shape right now. So if staff could address that, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Hanson?
From a safety standpoint, the bridge is not at risk. We do inspect it.
It's not gonna fall
fairly
down.
Routinely, it's not gonna fall down.
A paint job wouldn't have helped that.
Really good.
I
Trying
would
to
say
make the record clear.
I would say the more immediate need is there are drainage concerns off the end. If you look closely at the end of each side of the bridge, there are these flumes that have come detached from the bridge and do need to be repaired soon. So if we don't move forward with this project, we'll have to look at making repairs to at least that component soon, this next year.
Councilmember Demmer?
So the only urgency I saw was that those houses across are opening up, and I figured that all we would get is a paint job. So it's actually kind of interesting to see some people are interested in doing more. I think that could be a much more attractive entry to the city. Just past it, the trail under the railroad bridges is absolutely terrible, and I know you got to work with Burlington Northern to fix that up. And then we have that really nice newish trail, and just like you like the streets not to be way out of sync, it would be nice to get that whole area
Yes,
in
and
decent shape.
I could perhaps elaborate on that a little bit. The Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad is proposing to replace the double track bridges as soon as 2021. We understand. Now,
Great.
that could change, but we've been working with them actually within the past week on their proposed bridge replacement. So it's the double track on Coon Rapids Extension. It's not the single track.
And the
just a
trail
couple
under the single is just
Yes,
as
so
bad.
our desire is, and not promise, because it will take some efforts to work with the railroad, but is to, at a minimum, flatten out the slope of the trail as it goes under the bridges. The bridge replacement that the railroad is doing is going to just replace the beams across the road. And they're gonna go to a shallower beam, steel beam design that's gonna increase the vertical clearance on the road to a foot and a half, up to 14 feet. It's 12 feet right now, so we're gonna go to 14 feet. We'd like to get 14 and a half feet, but we're still working with the railroad to convince them that that's a good idea. But that means that the piers that are there today do not get replaced. So we have a clearance issue horizontally, and we also have a vertical issue. We might not be able to address the horizontal piece of that, but we're hopeful that the vertical component will be solved.
Yeah, so the part that's interesting is so for people who don't go through that area every day, there's been a lot of work done in that area on the lift station and on the roads. And so that little trail connection has, the part under the railroad bridges is close to a dirt trail at this point. Then there's the bridge section. Then there's a section right along Coon Rapids Boulevard, which isn't as bad, but it's got a lot of, crack bumps. We just fixed up Coon Rapids Boulevard, which looks beautiful, and then the trail's in kind of rough shape. But then after that, it's brand new sidewalk. So it's all like disjointed and weird. And so I am 100% in favor, if it makes sense to staff, to take a step back and not do something to the bridge and then do something over on the left side and then do something over, if there's a reason to just stop and say, can we kind of handle it all and make it all make sense together? Because it doesn't make a ton of sense right now.
I do agree with you. It's a tough area for the trail conditions because we have two high-pressure gas facilities that go through there that routinely have maintenance performed on them. And that's why you're seeing those patches, plus the railroad crossings. But I'm hopeful that we'll at least be able to address the double track segment of what you're talking about, the vertical, that hump that you encounter as you go under the tracks, and make that portion better. The Met Council, with their ongoing L34 lift station that they're conducting right now in that area, is going to be replacing a couple sections of those trails. So that will be new, and that will not be at any city cost to us. So we'll get some other pieces here out of these other improvements that are taking place.
So in your mind, does it make sense? Is it reasonable to say no and come back with a different estimate in a couple of months and look through how it could, no problem. I mean, how it could all, what other options we have other than just painting it gray?
Well, I would recommend that we move forward with the project because the condition, the visual aspect of the bridge right now is in bad shape. And I think it does need, we are gonna get to the point where it's really gonna need to be repainted. And the costs over time, we are gonna see go up. I think the costs in the next year or so, in terms of infrastructure overall, are gonna be favorable to the city. So, in general, I think now is the time to proceed with improvements. The improvement that we're looking at here to this bridge right now is not going to affect the Coon Rapids Boulevard Bridge, pedestrian bridge that we have applied for federal funds. That's further past Zilla Street. Certainly, though, it's a good point about the Al Flynn improvements that we are looking at. There's also a backage road that we would like to extend through there as well. But that said, I think the bridge is going to stay where it's at. And we'd already invested quite a bit in the streetscape elements that are there, the banner poles, the benches, the flower pots, and the bollards. And I think if we make this improvement, that really will add a nice touch to that area.
And to be fair, we're kind of joking about it being a paint job. There is structural concrete
Yes,
repair as
yeah,
well.
there are pieces of exposed rebar throughout. Back in the days that this bridge was built, things were over-designed because we didn't have computers to calculate exactly what the load limits would need to be. So things are generally thicker than they would need to be. So even though you see exposed rebar and things like that, it might look scary, but it's not structurally integral to the overall bridge functionality. And my recommendation would be to proceed with the project, but we'll certainly move forward as the council desires.
I guess one more question. What I'm wrestling with is we fix that up, we get the rebar holes covered up with new concrete, we paint the thing. That's all mostly the underside of the bridge we're dealing with, and then the drainage. As far as if we wanted to then go and add different design elements to it later, that wouldn't really, like, if we wanted to put stuff on it, you're gonna have to fix up the bridge part of the bridge either way.
Yes, yes.
Mr. Hanson, no matter what, we're gonna have to take care of the delaminating, we're gonna have to fix the flumes as you
Yeah, so
described
eventually
them.
we're gonna get to that point, and I would advise that those prices will go up incrementally over time.
So if we wanna add design elements later, all we're really doing is covering up some
Yes.
paint,
Yeah,
really.
yeah, yep.
Yeah.
Mr.
I
Mayor.
like where you're going, Mr. Councilmember Griscoviac.
Well, and I think that, right, even if the bridge was fixed up and concrete fixed and painted, it's still not a very visually aesthetic piece of, in our city. And I think it could be a lot nicer. I mean, if we're gonna keep it there, again, when we saw renditions of that pedestrian bridge that hopefully we can get some funding on, there was, there was elements of rock, in it. And I've seen, City of Andover just put up some signage up on Hanson over there right as you go in, and it looks nice. It's fascia rock. But I'm thinking, I mean, if we're gonna do this, maybe we could do something like that and maybe get that bid. Maybe that would even lower the cost of this spray paint regulation or whatever we have. I'm just thinking that we're gonna have a painted bridge at the end of the day. And if we could, I don't know what it would cost to just fix those aprons, as you mentioned, or if we could hold off on awarding this contract until we took a look at those things. I just think, it almost feels like we're gonna throw good money after bad at some point if we just paint this bridge.
Your Honor, may I ask just a question?
Sure. Councilmember Johnson.
To either Mr. Hanson or Mr. Stemwedel, is there any particular urgency with having this vote on this before year's end?
Well, Mayor and Council, at some point, we'll have to either accept or reject the bids, and they
We
can't
have
just sit out there
Right.
indefinitely.
We have a 60-day window.
A
to
60-day
accept or
window.
reject.
It was the 60 days from
From when we
now?
opened, which
Oh.
was last week.
Okay.
So you're saying we do have some time then?
A little bit.
At the first meeting in January, we typically are not able to conduct business, but we should be able to get it within the second one if we wanted to delay to that point.
And Mayor and Council, it'd be.
could.
If there's a council's interest in having discussion on the 4th, that's not a problem. We can talk about it then if there's interest in doing that. I don't know what's going to change between now and then, frankly. I mean,
Right.
this project isn't going to change. Perhaps we could give you some estimates on what it would cost to enhance it, but then we're talking about throwing it out, starting over, which is fine.
Right, 'cause-
But that's probably best we could give you by then is some engineer's estimates on facing it with stone or doing something else as a treatment to it. If we're talking about tying it in to an overall theme across this section of Coon Rapids Boulevard, that's really a longer-term discussion. I mean, there's a certain treatment to the area now, which was part of the discussion that came up at last meeting, or when this was considered, about whether or not we should look at that. Again, that's a higher level, much more expensive discussion. As it relates to Al Flynn Park, obviously, those things are very preliminary right now. We're just kind of theoretically talking about the improvements to Al Flynn. And then, the pedestrian bridges, we don't know. We don't have any outside funding for it yet. We may get there soon. Then there's a whole timeline to put that together. So I think if council's interested in tabling this for today, we could perhaps discuss with our consultant on what enhanced treatments might cost. I don't know that would give you how that might tie into the overall scheme at this point. But there's already some stone out there, and so perhaps we're just trying to match it to that stone rather than create a new aesthetic.
There has been some enhancements, while keeping with the quote historic nature of the bridge. The railings, the decorative railings were added, I believe, in the early 2000s, so that we have made some efforts to kind of enhance it already.
Your Honor.
Mr. Hanson, I'm sorry, as a clarification, when did you say our 60 days started?
I believe it's from when we opened the bid, which was on December 4th.
So we wouldn't have to make the decision the first council meeting then.
No, we should be able to, yes, we would
Right.
have at least until the second, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because we could actually do we could do a workshop on this.
And Mr. Mayor, I was gonna point that out, because don't we have a workshop coming up when we're gonna talk about expending the last $1.5 million in trail funds? And we're gonna talk about that. I mean, if it doesn't work across for what we're envisioning, then maybe this trail section is where we turn those funds. And again, I would just like to give it some time to see how that.
I'm just afraid we're
Yes.
going to lose Councilmembers Wells' support for this, going forward. So.
I'm afraid you're gonna end up spending more money. You'll outthink them.
This bid doesn't expire by then.
Mr. Stemwedel?
Yeah, and Mayor Council, my only point was that if council desired to talk about it sooner than later, we could put it on the 4th without preempting any other business. But certainly, we have an opportunity at the work session in January, and then so long as we confirm that we're within our timeline to consider at the second meeting
And we
in
would be,
January,
yeah.
we'll be okay.
Mr. Hanson, can they even paint this when it's in the winter like that?
No, the work would be done in May and June
summer.
of 2021.
Okay, all right.
Just by law, we have to approve or deny the bid.
No, I
The
understand.
the idea of bidding
We're
it
not
at this
holding them up,
time
though.
was
Yeah.
to bid it when contractors are generally slow, they're trying to plan for their work next
Yeah, that
year.
makes
We were
sense.
hopeful that we would get a price that was closer to our estimate.
Mr. Mayor, one last thing. Could I ask that we do get the plans and specifications, or at least the work that our consultant did to kind of prepare this?
Absolutely.
And then give that to everyone on the council?
Okay.
I will warn you, they're technical. There's a lot of stuff that may not be very straightforward, but certainly, yeah, we can absolutely provide that.
Maybe send the whole packet to Councilmember Griscoviac and just give us the cliff notes.
Send the whole packet to Wade as well.
If you're gonna motion to what I think you're, just hang on a second. Oh, no, not yet. Okay, all right. Councilmember Geisler.
So, Mr. Mayor, so for me, I am, supportive of, let's stop and we can talk about this, but I would actually support this thing tonight to actually go fix the bridge. Happy to talk about it at a work session. The basics are, the bridge has places that it's just ugly. And it is an entrance, and we need to shore it up. And there's more structural kinds of things to do to it than the whole price is not paint, right? And so the paint would buy us that time and take a look, because if we want to be looking at what is that full plan for all of the trails, what is that full plan for the design elements, that is going to take us months to put together. And so we would be sitting with all of this looking ugly for another year and a half. And to me, that just doesn't make any sense. So I'm happy to have a work session in January and then basically vote for what we could have voted for tonight.
I like the thought of, because when you get everything else done, and then instead of painting it, if you're going to put some sort of a cover on it, like the rocks or something, I guess I wouldn't mind considering that, because then you wouldn't paint it. You would instead put whatever else on to adhere your stones or your fascia.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, and to me, that is where, love to do the stone and whatnot, but that's a bigger conversation, because you're talking the port, you're talking the whole port master plan. It's not just, what do I do in this one spot? You have to look more holistically. And so to me, could I update this in a year, 2 years, when all of that plan is done for how would you beautify all along? Absolutely. I just wouldn't wait.
I thought we had some plan. I thought when we looked at that pedestrian bridge, I thought we had some perception or some conceptions of
Design elements.
design elements.
Yes,
Yeah.
Mayor, we do.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that, just putting that on this bridge, just make it look nicer.
Your Honor.
Councilmember Johnson?
So I think ultimately I'm probably going to get my head wrapped around supporting this, because it's work that needs to be done, and it is being bid at the right time and all that. But I actually would like the opportunity to kind of think about it a little more and to talk it through with other council members. So with that, unless anybody has anything more, I just move to table this agenda item.
But hang on, we have a motion and a second on the table right now. Do we have to deal with those, Mr. Brody?
Oh, I think we'll deal with those when we come back.
Yeah, I think what we're doing is we're taking a pause.
Okay, so we
That
can just-
motion is still viable at the next meeting.
That's how I would suggest we would proceed, is that it sounds like we do have a motion on the table, but we're asking to, now we've got a second motion to table the item in its entirety. I think when we do come back and remove it from the table, we'll be at that consideration of the motion itself,
Then
the
we can
original motion, I'm sorry.
Then we could just vote.
Okay, all right, very good.
I'll second the motion to table then.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to table. There is no discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
And it's
Aye.
it's
Aye.
to table to the first meeting of next year, is that right?
Second meeting,
Well,
the 14th.
That's what I want clarification on, and before we finalize the vote here.
Mayor, Council, it wasn't specified, but I would anticipate at this point, we would talk about in work session at the second Tuesday in January, and then it would come to before council on the third Tuesday in January.
Okay, just so we're clear, that's the motion.
That
so-
was my intent to second that.
Okay.
That was the motion and that was the second to table. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye again.
Opposed? And that is, matters tabled. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Hanson. Got anything else?
Unless you have any questions for the next agenda item.
Consider an easement agreement with Centra North LLC. Is that you again?
That would be me.
It is the Mark Show tonight. All right.
So, Council and Mayor, this is the easement that the city would eventually need if we were ever to construct the overpass or the pedestrian bridge overpass of Coon Rapids Boulevard, just north of Zilla Street. So we've worked with Centra Homes to obtain this easement. And just as an update regarding the federal funding application, we haven't heard the final determination yet on our application this past year, but we are in 3 of the 4 funding scenarios. And from all sense that I'm getting from talking to other agencies and other folks that are a little bit more involved with the final review, is that we stand a pretty good chance, and that would cover half the cost.
Okay.
And the construction of that, if it became fully funded with those federal funds, would probably be in like the 2024 range.
And there isn't any harm in doing the easement. If we don't get the bridge, we'll have the easement.
Well, we really do want to make sure we get the easement at this point before Centra Homes turns over the common interest portions of the development to an HOA, and then we're not negotiating with an HOA for this. So right now we have a very supportive partner, and we want to be able to obtain the easement at this point.
I just meant there was no downside for this easement at this point.
No.
Your Honor.
Councilmember Demmer?
Move to accept the permanent easement from Centra North LLC and authorize execution of the agreement.
Second.
Motion by Demmer, second by Johnson. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. And we're on to item 10, to consider resolution 20-108, approving the 2021 compensation plan for unrepresented employees. Mr. Stemwedel, our assistant manager's down for this, that I don't think I've met yet.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, yes, it's 2 birds with 1 stone here. I'll actually ask Lori Roth, who's our assistant city manager and HR manager, to hit the highlights of this item in the next one. Lori started with us a few months ago and hasn't had a lot of opportunity to come to council, one, because of the current state of things, and 2, this was really the first opportunity to have an item on the agenda. So with that, I'll pass to Lori.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. As it relates to resolution number 20-108 concerning the 2021 compensation plan for unrepresented employees, the request is for a 2% increase. This is part of the city's annual update to our compensation plan. We arrived at the 2% by comps with other cities in consideration of the current economy and alignment with our current budget. Also, this is consistent with the 2% that is proposed in the Public Works upcoming contract.
Okay. Questions? Okay, Mr. Stemwedel, we're good with this?
Mayor and Council, yes, so just to give a little background on some of this, as we'll talk about with the next contract, we really try to take a step back and look at what's sort of fair within terms of our employees, what we're seeing in our market. So that's sort of locally our market, but also we get compared to similar sized cities across the metro. And it doesn't apply in this situation, but it does apply in any of our union situations where we're always sort of under the potential that if we don't agree with the union, that we could go to some sort of interest arbitration with them. And the arbitrator is going to look at those things. They're going to look at your ability to pay. So are you struggling to pay or aren't you? What's your market? And those sorts of things. And so in this case, we looked at the 2% and felt that was an appropriate amount.
All right. Council? Thoughts, questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Geisler?
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 20-108, establishing the 2021 compensation plan for unrepresented employees.
Second.
Motion by Geisler, second by Wells. Discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Griscoviac?
I would just say that, 2020 was a tough year, but our city employees really hung in there. I mean, they're getting a cost of living increase. That makes sense. 2021 is probably going to be another year where we're going to have to really look at that budget and align these things, but we can do that, and we'll get there. This is basically a cost of living increase.
All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? And that motion carries. And we're on to item 11, consider adoption of Resolution 20-107, approving the 2021 and 2022 Teamsters Local 320 Public Works Collective Bargaining Agreement. Now, at this point, Lori, you are 1 for 1, so looks like we're going to you on this one, too.
Thank you. Before we get started, I just wanted to point out a point of clarification in the subject line. It says approving 2021-2022. This is just for, the contract term is going to be just for 2021.
Oh, yeah, down in the discussion, it says through December 31st, 2021.
Correct.
So, yeah.
So the recommendation is that this be a one-year contract. I'll just dive into the major points of the contract changes. A one-year contract. Terms are proposed to offer some flexibility in what is somewhat of an uncertain economic time. A 2% COLA is proposed for this one-year term. The 2% was arrived by looking again at comparable cities and consideration of the current economy. Other changes are primarily to the terms and conditions that were negotiated in good faith by the city and the union. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have questions.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Johnson?
So I have one question, and I guess this makes me feel good that I have a question like this because it shows that Councilmember Griskowiak's not the only one who reads deep into the details. But there's a $600 tool allowance that's in there, and I wanted to just ask about what's the thought process behind that. You know, there's probably a really good explanation for it, but in my way of thinking, is that there as an actual tool allowance, or is it there because there's some tool that we're not buying, and then the question is maybe we should be, or is it just, you know, a way to deal in the negotiations to add something more to the ultimate income for the employee?
Lori? Or Matt?
Sure. Well, we found, we compared ourselves to other cities, and it was competitive. Other cities were offering a level of a tool allowance. So we require our employees to actually bring many of their own tools into the work site. There's wear and tear on those tools. $600 comparatively is a very modest tool allowance.
Mayor, Council, I'll just add, so in the case of the mechanics, it's a unique situation in the Public Works Union. The mechanics, up to this point, have been required to fully fund the cost of all of their tools. So every ratchet, every vice grip, everything they bring, they have their own toolboxes. That's their equipment. And it's getting to be where more and more municipalities, at least, are helping fund the need for that, because it's a traditional thing within the mechanics field to do that. Although I would say it's evolving, especially in shops, as we're all trying to kind of compete for like services that employers are starting to offer this. It really affects just 5 people within our Public Works Union. It's a pretty small group, but we just looked at it. It's been a request on their radar for a couple of cycles now that up until this point we've denied, but at this point we were supportive of it.
So I think that's fair and appropriate then. If what we're doing is expecting them to source certain tools and to attend to those tools and whatnot, then they're ultimately going to be their tools.
Correct.
Then we should be providing allowance because it's part of the essential part of the job. So thank you for answering that.
Mm-hmm. And is it specific to those 5, or are all of our public work employees, Teamsters, eligible for that?
Mayor and Council, only those who are specifically mechanics within the union. So there's only about 5 positions that are actual mechanics, and they have to qualify for that. They have a separate job description and so forth. And so only those 5. If there was an employee who transferred internally, then they would now become eligible for that allowance, but up until that point, they are not.
Okay.
Good.
I think that's fair. We just gave the Snap-on guy $130 to rebuild my air ratchet. I mean, it's, that stuff is
Mr. Mayor?
expensive. Councilmember Griskowiak?
I'm sure the city manager and assistant city manager are great negotiators, but I don't think they'd like to be negotiating all the time. And I was just wondering, you know, it's just a one-year contract where typically these are two. Is that considered just of the pandemic that we're in, or is there something else holding us back where we can't get a two-year agreement and put this to bed for 2 years?
Mayor, yeah, Mayor and Council, it was my preference really at this point to look at a one-year contract, given the evolving nature of things that are going on right now. The other thing is that there were very few settlements that were being settled this year for next year. Very few, in fact. And so we're sort of somewhat trendsetters. A lot of them were settled at 3%, but they're settled last year. And so part of my strategy going back into the middle of the summer, you know, we're kind of feeling our way through the budget process and so forth, was to do kind of a one-year, not hold your nose, but just sort of a one-year contract. Let's get it done, and let's look at where things are at next year, because it may benefit you, the union, to do that, but it also gives us maximum flexibility that if something really changes. And the things that I was concerned about going into negotiations were potential volatility around state aids. You know, now the budget deficit's looking a little better. In fact, they don't have a deficit anymore. Supposedly, they have a surplus, but we'll see where that comes in February as the pandemic continues to evolve. And so it was things like that that we looked at. Let's just do a one-year contract. It does create a little bit more work for us, but on the other hand, there are a number of issues we're able to kind of punch out on the list this year that I don't expect will come back to us next year when we're going through this. So I thought it was important to maintain flexibility for us in the budget process as we're kind of moving forward, although it does make it a little more challenging from budget prediction standpoint on what wages are, because if you settle it, you just know what the number is and you move on. But to be honest with you, if we had a hard enough time looking at what 2021 COLA was achievable, it'd be even more difficult if we were trying to look out into 2022, because there really would be no comps out there. We really would be kind of starting to stand alone in that year, at least in the municipal world.
Yep. And at the rate we're printing money, yeah. I mean, not us personally, but.
Yeah.
Mayor, I did have one other point on this one, and that's that Article 19, that sick leave. One of the things, you know, I've been here for 4 years. I remember 2018, and there was sunset language regarding sick leave incentive program. That was going to expire at the end of 2020. I see that this agreement removes that sunset clause, and I was just wondering if you could explain why that is. It probably has something to do with the health benefits themselves, or do you know why they're, it just kind of seems odd to me that in 2018 it was a point, you know, so they negotiated in good faith to sunset that, but then they're never going to see the sunset because they're negotiating it out in the next agreement.
So Mayor and Council?
Mr. Stemwedel?
There was language regarding, there was a difference between sick leave incentive program and our wellness program under 19.5, is that what you're referring to?
Yes, yep.
And so there were actually two options there, and over time we've converted all of our groups, including unrepresented, to just purely a wellness program. So we used to have a sick leave incentive program that if you used only so many sick days or fewer, you actually got essentially what are the same benefits being offered under the wellness,
whatever, yeah.
under the wellness program. And so that's been phased out, and it's the wellness program now that we've geared everybody towards. That's what sunset was, the sick leave incentive in favor of the wellness program.
So we used to pay people if they didn't take their sick days, and now we're thinking we should have them take their sick days when they're sick?
Correct. Yeah.
I approve of that.
Because we don't want them coming in when they're sick.
Especially now.
All right, any other questions on that?
Your Honor?
Councilmember, who was that? Kicker, there we go. Hi.
I'll make a motion that the council adopt resolution number 20-107, approving the labor agreement between the city and Teamsters local number 320.
Second.
Motion by Kicker, second by Geisler. Discussion? Hearing no additional discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. And I can't tell you how excited I am to get to item 12 and have Mr. Anderson's smiling face back in the room with us again tonight. We're looking to consider Resolution 20-109, establishing Bunker Hills Golf Course fees and charges. Mr. Anderson, you want to hit the highlights?
I certainly can, and I do want to say it's fantastic to be here. It's been quite a while. At the tail end of a golf season, I'd say it's the end of the golf season, but it's supposed to be 40 on Sunday.
Oh, nice.
You just never know. You never know. If we can avoid that snow on Friday, we'll see what happens. So, yeah, the highlights of this are, for the most part, we're recommending that fees stay the same. We believe we're very well positioned in the marketplace. Where we do have increases are our cart fees. In the budget for 2021 is a new cart fleet. Carts are expensive to procure, maintain, power, and clean. So those rates are increasing somewhat substantially. I do want to note that increase to our cart fees is enough to pay in itself for the new cart fleet, and it's really important for you to hear that. Ridership is increasing, it's through the roof. We didn't know with the pandemic. We thought nobody would be riding. We didn't know if we were anyone was going to be allowed to ride, and then everybody rode. It was amazing. They had dividers in the carts, and it was like we've talked about, it's a very unique year. But moving forward, we see ridership continuing to grow. The wear and tear on golf carts continuing to be a factor. And this increase, the market can certainly bear, and there's far less sensitivity in raising rates for golf carts than walking rounds, and walking rounds will stay the same. So those are the only increases, but they are substantial.
All right. Mr. Stemmel or Mr. Johnson or Anderson, I was just curious about the attached resolution also provides the golf pro manager and city manager authority to temporarily adjust fees if it's in the best interest of the golf operation. I was just curious, temporary, should that be defined somewhere? How long is temporary? And we already have you with these executive order powers. Do we want Mr. Anderson to have those as well now?
He doesn't want them.
Mayor and Council, I'll attempt to explain that a little bit. It is a new feature in this, and I can tell you where it's coming from and what the intent is. So from time to time, and Tim will maybe mention things like if the greens are being worked on, they're for temporary amount of time, they're a lesser quality, and so maybe we'd have the opportunity to reduce the fee on a temporary basis to match the kind of time frame of which those greens are being challenged. The other thing where this is coming from is the pandemic, so everything's about COVID-19, I guess. We'll make this about that too. That as we looked across the market and if there were opportunities to say we needed to be more competitive on our price, or if we look to Sunday afternoon and things were slow on Sunday afternoons, maybe we can do some things to flex some prices there. So it's introducing a little bit of dynamic pricing into the operation, which up until this point has been very static. We sort of established those rates, they are what they are. But what Tim and I talked about this season was allowing some flexibility. Primarily it would be down, I would think. Maybe there's a situation where it would come up, but if it's going to be dynamic, I suppose it could do both. That's why we didn't define that. We too did talk about the temporary piece, but we thought that gets pretty complicated because whatever amount of time we pick is arbitrary.
Sure.
But the intent would be for short periods of time, a few days period of time, or this afternoon, or things like that. And then I don't know, Tim, if there's anything else that you want to mention in that regard.
I'll just add to that, this would most likely never be utilized, but if you do have a situation, and we don't expect in the next 5 or 10 years that we would need a significant project on the golf course. You're renovating bunkers, which we just did. We won't be planning on doing that for a very long time, but that would be a good situation to use this. And we did that in the past few years where we reconstructed bunkers. It would have been good at that time probably to do something for those 3 or 4 weeks because it was a significantly different golf experience for people, and that would have gone a long way, I think, to just have some goodwill and maybe bring some more folks to the golf course. So it'd be situations like that. I don't see this being used unless it is something that's very unique and very necessary to use it.
Yeah. And I trust your wisdom on this, and at the end of the year, you're the one that's responsible for that enterprise fund, so it's got to work out. Councilmember Demmer first.
Yeah, so, as long as it's not you pay 20% less and then the next person in pays 20% more, then that makes sense to me.
Right.
And, feel free to offer it in like Kendall's gift cards or something too if you want to give people a discount. But it makes tons of sense that people are allowed to have a sale at their own establishment, so I'm supportive of that.
Councilmember Geisler?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, and so where the resolution says we can amend specific rates up to 20%, I'm assuming that this implies up or down. The other question is, at what point do you ever deviate from here's the stated rate? So let's say I take it down by 10%. Can I take it down 20% from that temporary rate? I'm always going from the stated rate, correct?
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure that we're clear with that. So a temporary rate doesn't become permanent.
True.
We are giving him these executive order
I know.
powers, though, so. Councilmember Johnson?
So I'm not proposing any change to the resolution, but would you then intend to, report to the city council periodically about those times in which you had to do that? Would that become part of an annual report or something along those lines, just so that we had a little bit of oversight even
Sure.
after the fact?
Yeah. Mayor and council, I think what we could do then is perhaps when we're presenting this to you next year, give you a summary of if and when those changes occurred, when they occurred and how often, and then that way you'll be informed if we request that flexibility again, how it looked in 2021.
Cool, thanks.
I mean, I can see where this would be a great plan. I mean, if we had that day where all of a sudden you went, oh my gosh, we have no golfers today, you could do your Facebook special for the
Right.
day or something.
That's-
I mean,
yeah.
to give yourself some promotional opportunities also, I think that's wise. Okay, anybody think enough of this to move it?
I think it's so great
Councilmember Demmer?
that I will move Resolution 20-109, establishing Bunker Hills Golf Course fees and charges.
Second.
Motion by Demmer, second by Kicker. Discussion? Any more? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, that passed. Mr. Anderson, don't make it so long next time, though. We are at the open mic public comment portion of the meeting now. If you are here to address council for open mic, open mic provides an opportunity for the public to address the city council on subjects that are not part of the regular meeting agenda, and the public is invited to express any concerns they may have which are relevant to the affairs, policies, or practices of the city of Coon Rapids, and remarks will be limited to 3 minutes. It was up for open mic? Give us your name and address, and then you've got 3 minutes.
Mr. Mayor, Council, my name is Katie Kofer, and I do live at 11920 Dogwood Street Northwest here in Coon Rapids. And first, thank you very much. Moved here in May 2019. Love the city. And I want to tell you that, first, your schools are amazing. Your teachers have done an amazing job with my son. He has autism. And Eisenhower. You should, I don't know, I'd like to talk more on another time, maybe individually, but you have an amazing education system here. So
That's awesome.
when Miss Keenholz was the first teacher my son had. But anyway, because I know I'm limited to 3 minutes, I wanted to bring.
We can start the clock now, because that was
Okay.
really nice about the school.
Okay,
wasn't it?
'cause let
Everybody
me-
okay with that? Okay,
I
we'll
just-
start your 3
you
minutes
do,
now.
You have to
Yeah, there was
know.
no question there.
You have to know that your schools, the whole team, everybody has worked so hard because it was an onset of some pretty big behaviors, and what they do to keep him in and strive for his success. It is absolutely amazing.
That's great to hear.
So, thank you to Eisenhower. So, okay.
Okay.
Okay, here is my question, or it's an area of concern, and I wanted Mr. Mayor and council members. It's bringing safety awareness to the area, the neighborhood of Burl Oaks Estates. It is known as it's a younger neighborhood now. There are a lot of foot travelers, bikers, joggers, a lot of people walking their dogs. There aren't any sidewalks, which is fine because it's a beautiful neighborhood. But there's a lot of traffic between you turn off 120th and there's people, they cut through to go over to Foley, off to Goldenrod. There's a lot of twists and turns. The speed limit is technically 30 miles per hour. I was almost hit last winter when I was checking some of that ice. I got yelled at and I was called some pretty bad names by a delivery guy because he was going 30 miles per hour, even though that curve, you hit it, you can slide. My son, with his autism, I brought it up. I taught him very much so to look both ways. But it's not just that, it's the safety of the whole entire area. Yes, I brought it up, they did a speed test or a quality or quantity of how many cars in a period, and there were so many cars didn't warrant a stop sign. Well, it's not so much a stop sign for that area, it's the entire area. So putting your brains together, putting our brains together, the whole neighborhood is aware of the situation, and so we're trying to come together to figure out a way to prevent something before it happens. So err on the side of caution, because when my neighbor's 2 little kids were almost hit a couple weeks ago by a landscaper, and he yelled at the mom, and then the homeowner canceled the service of that landscaper, which is great, but he said he wasn't doing anything wrong because he took that curve. Even though they were way on the side, he still almost hit them. So we just need to bring some type of awareness or something to the community, whether it's a walking line.
Is this something, you can just nod, you don't have to get up. Is this something the traffic review committee would look at, about maybe an arrowed, this corner is 15 miles an hour or something? Is that something traffic review committee could look at?
Yeah, and I believe what Ms. Keeper is mentioning is we as staff, we reviewed the stop sign request. We did traffic counts, we did a crash history, that's what our policy is.
Okay.
We found that it didn't meet the warrants for a stop sign installation. We also looked to see if there was any site triangle issues, visibility issues in the area. We didn't find that to be the case. If there were, we would have contacted those residents to remove those landscaping elements that could be causing that.
The Steves are having a conniption back in the control room right now, Mark. I was just looking for a head nod.
Yes, I have,
Okay.
and then my next step, going to the safety committee, Mr. Mayor, but when I went to them at first, they're saying that this area, you don't need stop signs really, and I said, well, there is a stop sign here. No, there's not, and I pointed out on Google Maps that yes, there is a stop sign right here at the intersection of 120th and Cottonwood Street Northwest. Oh, and it wasn't known. So I think maybe a little bit more investigation of the entire area, because it is dark. So,
Okay.
and even in the day.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Demmer, question?
Just, clarifying questions here. The way it works is they'll write a report, but the question I have is, was your major concern that people are using it as a cut-through and you want to reduce the number of cars that are cutting through that neighborhood instead of taking the major roads? Or was your concern even traffic within the neighborhood, people who live there, people who are doing business there?
It's the traffic, it's the speeding. Turning left into my driveway with my turn signal on, I've been passed twice. On the left, because people didn't want to wait. So it's the safety.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Mr. Stemwedel?
Mayor, Council, I'll mention that I think it maybe got across, but just to reiterate that this is actually going to come before the Safety Commission soon, I think in January. So perhaps we'll report back to the council. January 14th. So maybe
Okay.
we'll anticipate rather
Sorry
than.
for cutting you off, Mr. Hanson.
Rather than reporting at the next council meeting, it makes sense probably to have that discussion then and bring it back at an open mic report after that meeting's over, just so we can give you a better view of what's going on.
Okay, so rather than you getting a report right after this meeting, you'll get a report after they've had their safety
Safety Commission.
Safety Commission,
Yeah.
thank you. I knew that. Councilmember Johnson?
So I'm really sensitive to this kind of issue because it exists in my own neighborhood too, where we don't have sidewalks, and I know it exists in other neighborhoods as well. And where you have a neighborhood that's kind of changing from maybe, you know, a neighborhood that has older families or retired couples and things like that living, and then you have it evolving into a place where there are a lot more kind of evolving new kids, families that are out for walks and things like that. I wonder if there's some things that the city might consider doing that are like targeted kind of public awareness things. I don't know if leafleting is the right thing. Maybe we have a meeting in the park where we can talk about that up in that general neighborhood, but just to kind of remind people to slow down. We run into it in my neighborhood a lot with the kind of rush hour times, and where it really is impactful now more so than anything is in the afternoon, evening rush hour, because some people get home early and kids get home earlier than people that are working out of their homes, and then people are just wanting to get back to their home and get dinner made or pick up something, and they're just driving fast. And I think just if we can help neighborhoods in some way, try to remember, you know, to look out for each other, that would be a nice thing.
I've got to believe the price of those dynamic signs is coming down too. I see so many of those in so many places. Last night I was leaving Farmington and I was coming through Apple Valley, and it reminded me that, oh, this is a 30 here. Whoops.
Yeah, right. Well, where it really gets you is Hastings, where they actually have lower speed limits.
Oh, Councilmember Hanson, or Mr. Hanson, if you're any more than a head nod, go to the mic.
Just to append on to that discussion, I would just like to remind the council and anybody that's watching on that topic that at any point, anyone can go on our city website. Under the police tab, there is a request that driver feedback trailer, the mobile trailer. You can go online, you can request that for your neighborhood. So that's something to help remind people. And often people aren't really going, you know, they're not speeding, they're not going over 30 miles per hour. It just often feels like they're going a lot faster than they are when you're standing near them. But in any case, that option is available for people, and we always remind people of that.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Well,
Maybe catch us after the meeting?
yeah,
Okay.
there you go.
Yeah.
Especially because it's going to be in January, maybe you can just share it with Mr. Hanson after the meeting. All right, anybody else here for open mic? All right, we're going to close that portion of the meeting, and we are on to item 13, which is an open mic response for Mr. Wagner from our last council meeting. He appeared before council to ask for assistance with vehicles parking in front of mailboxes in his neighborhood, which results in mail not being delivered. The city attorney's office reviewed the city's parking code and Minnesota state statutes and confirmed there are no prohibitions against parking in front of a mailbox. There is also no federal law that would prohibit parking in front of mailboxes. As part of this review, staff discovered that a few suburban communities have adopted ordinances prohibiting parking within a certain area in front of a mailbox. The U.S. Postal Service does ask that the area in front of mailboxes be kept free of obstructions, and a mail carrier may skip a mailbox if there is a continual issue or if obstructions create a hazard. If only it was the person whose mail was getting skipped was the one parking there. Yeah. Okay, and that was provided for informational services, so that would be determined if the council wants to have a conversation about that at another date, right? Okay.
Your Honor.
Councilmember Demmer?
Not that we're going to go back and do it for the whole city or anything like that, but it might be something as the occasional new neighborhood does get built, that we try to proactively have them do things that'll reduce the chance of that happening, such as putting them across from opposite driveways and not having driveways staggered in such a way where the only way you can park is a mailbox. Like I said, we're not going to redesign it, but maybe we can make it better going forward. Alternately, if there's any of those ordinances in other cities that would make sense to look at, I don't think I love a blanket, but, if there's somebody out there who says if you put a no parking sticker on your mailbox, we'll enforce it, I doubt that exists, but if there's ways to make it clear you don't want someone parking there, whatever makes sense.
And sometimes these ordinances get put in place so that they're there to enforce when necessary.
Right.
If you have the car that's always blocking the mailboxes, yeah, sure. All right. I'd like to skip item 14. But we're going to do item 14. And we have a couple council members that are leaving tonight, Councilmembers Steve Wells and Bill Kicker, whose terms will expire at the end of December, have served the city of Coon Rapids admirably. Yes, they have. Councilmember Wells has served on the city council for 2 terms after being elected as the council member at large in 2012 and 2016 by the biggest margin ever, I believe that was, wasn't it?
I don't keep track of those kind of things, but it might be. Maybe.
Maybe. And Councilmember Kicker has served in the city council for 1 term after being elected as the Ward 2 council member in 2016. And I can only say what a great honor it's been to work with both of you for this time. I just enjoy you so much. You add so much to this council, and, well, your votes, and when a necessary word comes, it's always there. Yeah, I just thank you guys so much. Thank you. I'll have to put my thing back on here. Councilmember Wells and Councilmember Kicker, if you can meet me out in front of the dais. I see one side's considerably shorter.
Well, there's one name that's a little shorter.
Because clearly we're gonna have to have pictures of this. Wells Way.
My wife will like that, that's her maiden name.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah. Works well.
Spelled differently, but.
It's fine though. And Kicker Court, those look great. I love it. I wasn't sure if it was gonna be cul-de-sac or what, but I'll get out of the way now, you guys.
We went with the alliteration.
And Your Honor, I would just like to echo, I just feel like I've learned a ton from both council members and thank them for their thoughtfulness in the meetings and in the work sessions and just for being good and nice people and doing their part. This is not necessarily a job that everyone would sign up to do, and anytime someone is willing to do it, it's a benefit to the community. So thank you both.
Thank you.
It's
Your
been
Honor.
a pleasure serving with both of you.
Well, thank you.
Really has been.
You know I'll be brief, but I would definitely like to thank staff. 8 years, been fabulous staff. And, they are the backbone of the city. They do the day-to-day operations and stuff. But I've also been with great councils. I appreciate that. And I got to give the mayor his 8 years as the council pro tem. I've never done a meeting between Tim Howe and the mayor. 8 years, they've never missed. That's to be admired. And I'd also like to thank the public. People are so positive in this town. I see people I don't even know that thank me for being on the council and stuff. And it's a great city to live in. I've been here 40-plus years. I don't plan on going anywhere. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Wells. Councilmember Kicker?
I guess I'd like to echo a lot of what Steve just said. First and foremost, thanking the staff. Anybody I run into, I tell them how great the staff is to work for, and you make what we do easy. There's things where I would think things need to be run this way, and they are. So kudos to to the entire staff. It really, I feel it makes what we do a lot easier. And then, of course, to the fellow council members, it's been an honor working with all of you as well. I've learned a lot in the last 4 years, and it's really been a lot of fun. And as I was talking to Mr. Hanson, I said, you know, what I'm going to miss the most is just the people that I've met. There's a lot of things that we do that aren't all that glamorous, but staff and council have been a real joy to work with. And then, of course, the constituents, the residents of Coon Rapids. It's been, you know, it's been an honor and my pleasure to represent you. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to in particular miss your smiling face down there. Every time I go, look, you're smiling. All right. Other business to come before council? Mr. Stemwell.
Mayor, Council, just mention a couple of quick things. One is that our first meeting in January is actually on a Monday, so it'll be Monday, the 4th of January. You can disregard, I think I mentioned it being the 5th in one of my emails recently. It's actually the 4th, first Monday in January, which is required per our charter after an election year. So to you and the public, just a heads up on that. And as we're getting into the holiday season now, just an FYI, that City Hall is closed on December 24th and the 25th, and then on the 31st in observance of New Year's, which falls on us, or is that on Friday this year? So we'll be closed 3 times in the next 2 weeks here, just FYI, in case you wanted to do business on those days.
What was the
come ahead
third
of time.
time? I missed the third time. It was the
It's the-
24th, 25th, the New Year's.
What's that? New Year's Day, yes, which is a Friday.
Oh, I see.
At first, I was thinking it was on a Saturday, but it's actually on a Friday, yeah.
Oh, okay.
We're closed only that day.
Okay, so 3 days, not 3 separate times.
Right,
Okay, all
yeah.
That's, I thought, well, I'm missing a holiday in here somewhere. All right. Other business to come before council this evening? All right.
Your Honor, move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Wells and a second by Kicker to adjourn. All in,
Discussion on this?
unfortunately, not for adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.